Before we get started, I just want to drop a trigger warning on this episode. Aiden and I often get into some pretty heavy topics. If you're not in a place to hear that right now, that is completely fine. Go away, come back another day, or just skip this episode. That's okay. We're not experts, we're not medical professionals, and I'm sure we will make mistakes along the way. So do not take our advice as professional, and if we do get anything wrong, feel free to correct us on any of our socials. We're humans and we're always learning, so we definitely have the space to hear you.
Okay. What are we talking about today, Sophie?
Sexuality.
Oh.
Wow. I was just thinking of, I want to get physical. But that's definitely not the song that my brain wanted to sing, but that's the song that came to my
What's
head.
that like? Talking about sex.
Baby. That's it! That's what I was looking for.
Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that make me. Oh, we're not talking about sex specifically.
Not sex
We're
specifically.
talking about sexuality.
Sexuality.
Okay. I want to get started with a little bit of LGBTQ plus legislation history in Australia, because I found it very interesting when I was looking this up, and I got it from the federal government's website. So if this information is wrong, Australia is lying to me.
Unsurprising.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit interesting because there is stuff going on in Parliament at the moment that does affect some of these things, but I'm not going to get into that at the moment because none of that is even finalised, so I can't even comment on it. But around the world, homosexuality and homosexual acts are still criminalised in 69 countries, which isn't nice. And
No, but it's not that surprising.
majority of them, I think it was roughly like 80%, were African countries.
So
I definitely don't have a lot of information on African politics, so I can't really comment on it. But if that's not surprising to some of you guys, please message me and educate me about it, because I'm very interested in that.
Honestly, it'd be a bit weird if it was. You're like, no, actually, I'm an expert specifically on this.
Look, that
Just
would be
South
very
African-
weird.
I know, not South African, African politics. I'm an expert on African politics.
I'm not at all.
Legislation.
Australian legislation history. 1975, the first state in Australia decriminalised homosexual acts. Can you guess which state it would be? I was surprised.
Decriminalised it.
Decriminalised it. I was actually surprised.
Canberra.
No, that's a territory. I didn't say a state.
Oh, yeah, okay. I just got excited because Canberra always legalises decrims everything first because they want to be able to do the bad shit.
And I was surprised about this one, and I think you will be too for another reason.
I think it's Western Australia. I don't know. I'm trying to think of where I'd be most surprised by. Anyway, you tell me.
It's South Australia, which surprised me because sex work is still criminalised there.
Yeah.
Very heavily. Even dancers are very heavily monitored.
Yeah.
And they have the strictest laws in Australia with sex workers. So I was surprised about this because in my mind, homosexual acts and sex work, like, I don't know, they kind of fall under the same thing when it comes to legislation. Like, they are generally...
The similar people tend to prejudice against both of those things.
Yeah.
I see. Interesting, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Western Australia would have been most interesting for me because I do see them as being the most conservative. Which, to be fair, they are. Also, the yes vote. They were the most no's. So.
Yeah. How many years do you think it took from 1975 for all of Australia to have decriminalised homosexual acts?
Oh, I think that it was a long time. I think that it was in... What year did you just say?
1975.
I think it wasn't until 1988.
More.
Oh my gosh, 1992.
More.
What? To decriminalise homosexual So homosexuality.
Homosexual acts. So it took 12 years for the entirety of Australia to decriminalise homosexual acts in men.
Wait, what was the year?
1997. The last state to do it was Tasmania.
So that's more than 12 years.
The second last state was Queensland, which was in 1990. And after South Australia, it went ACT, Victoria, then...
See, ACT second.
Mm-hmm.
They're cheeky buggers over there. They love to do everything.
Yeah, they would right onto it too.
Politicians.
It wasn't that many years later as well. Yeah. Next was Northern Territory and New South Wales. That was early to mid 80s. Then WA was at the end of 80s. Then Queensland was in 1990, and Tasmania in 1997. They were very, very hesitant to do it, and obviously took them quite a long time to get along with the rest of Australia. Which
get with it.
Yeah, sort your shit out, Tasmania. Anyway, you sorted it out now, I guess. It's been a while.
I guess.
I think one thing that a lot of people don't really understand is the law around this was specifically around the homosexual act between men.
Mm-hmm.
So none of these laws had anything to do with women or people with vaginas.
Also unsurprising.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, we don't mean to say that doesn't mean that they had a lot of prejudice against them. They absolutely did.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to know that the laws weren't against them.
Yeah. It was specifically about sexual acts, which I just find really strange. Why do politics care about what two people are consensually doing in their house? But, you know, this is a long time ago, so I guess we can't really be upset about it at the moment, but, you know, it makes me a little bit mad.
If one man wants to be sodomized by another man, who are you to say otherwise?
Exactly.
How dare
just
you?
Let him
get sodomized!
Jesus. After homosexual acts in men was decriminalised, there was a big divide on the age that was allowed, in quotes, to happen. For a very long time, in many states, it was 18 years old. Specifically for men, again, or penis owners. But now all states and territories agree that it is 16 for every human, no matter.
Just to be clear, if you're not Australian or you don't know Australian law, other sexual acts are 16.
Yeah. All
so when we say
acts,
18, it's because other sexual acts was 16.
Yeah, sorry, I should have clarified.
And that was back on 18.
But yeah, so now all sexual acts are now allowed, in quotes, I guess, from 16 and up, not one specific one for one specific type of person at 18 and above.
Two specific type of people, me and gay people.
Well, no, you have a vagina. Oh, I suppose no.
No, sodomy as an act wasn't allowed until you're 18.
That's right. Yeah.
Because there was that, that assumption that the people who sodomized each other were men, gay men, and we don't like gay men. They're not allowed to do that.
If anyone doesn't know what sodomized means, they basically mean butt sex.
Anal sex.
Anal butt.
Anal penetration.
Anal
penetrating the anus. Yes. That is what it means. Is it still sodomizing if it's a finger? I mean, a finger is relatively phallic.
I can look it up if you like.
Yeah, can you look up the definition of sodomy for me? Hey Siri.
Oh, it just says anal sexual intercourse.
See, then we're going into the definition of sexual intercourse. It doesn't matter, alright? I think sex is what you believe it is. Sodomy is whatever you want it to be, okay?
In the Bible, I think that's a Bible verse, which implies that Sodom, which is the English version of sodomia, which is in Latin, is practiced homosexual R-word. I don't want to say that.
Interesting.
I don't want to say the word because I know we generally have a warning at the end of these, but still, it's not a nice word, so I'm sure you figured out what I meant. Okay, cool. Bible sucks. Anyway,
what?
The Bible sucks.
The Bible sucks? I've never heard anyone say that before. How dare you?
Moving on. Now that we've covered what sodomy is.
We've covered sodomy, we've covered the Bible, we are going for it today.
Each state and territory since 2016 now all agree on the same age of consent, like I just said. So that's 16 years of age for all sexual acts, which is awesome. Although domestic partnerships between same-sex couples started in 2003, federal law have recognized same-sex couples since 2009 as de facto relationships. So you could have a domestic partnership as a same-sex couple from 2003, but they weren't considered de facto until 2009.
That is wild.
And then same-sex marriage was not legalized until 2017.
Well, yes, I knew that. Yes,
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
So
I didn't know it wasn't recognised, though. I mean, not that that's the most fucked up thing we just said, but I didn't realise that it wasn't recognised. That means the first time I had a same-sex partner,
yeah,
it wouldn't have been. I mean, I was too young anyway.
Yeah.
But if I had been of age.
yeah.
Interesting.
For those of you who don't know what a de facto relationship is, I think the laws back then were 12 months, but you had to be living with someone for a certain amount of time. I think it's only 6 months now. Don't quote me on that.
It's actually different in every state. In Queensland, it's 6 months. In New South Wales, it's 12 months. And I don't know about any other state because I have not lived there.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You had to be living with someone, your partner, and have proof of a partnership, which is generally like money and bills together and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you have almost essentially the same amount of rights over that other person's things if that person passes away, etc., as if you were married to that person.
Yes. Which I also find it interesting because you don't apply for that. It just is. It just is.
Yeah.
So you don't get a choice.
Yeah.
So, which is, I find very interesting the fact that it's only 6 months in Queensland, especially during COVID. Like, imagine how many people would have, because I know a lot of partners moved in during COVID just for convenience, because they didn't really have much other choice apart from not seeing each other. So it's really interesting to think about the fact that a lot of people are legally tied to each other after 6 months.
I think it's like a little bit confronting to think about that when, you know, if you get into like a life-threatening car accident, your de facto partner can have more of a say over what goes on with you than some family members.
Yeah.
Which can be a little bit confronting for some people that aren't in very good relationships. And if you think about 6 months, like, that's not a very long time.
Yeah. It would be interesting to look into, because they have the same rights as a married couple, essentially. I think there are some differences. But could they take you to court in the same way that someone can when you get divorced?
Well, yeah.
And, like, get half of your things? Or
you can have a dispute about, like, goods and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And once you split up households, you can have a dispute over it. You can hire a lawyer about a de facto relationship splitting up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is really scary to think that someone could, theoretically, take half your stuff, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Or whatever. After 6 months.
Yeah.
That is such a short period of time.
Yeah.
Especially if you've only just started dating before that, you just moved in really quickly or whatever.
It definitely makes you want to think about moving in with someone. The reason why I'm talking about all of these facts, as like Tofu mentioned earlier, both of us identify in the Alphabet Mafia. We've both been in same-sex couples. There's a little bit of argument about this. I'm polyamorous, so some people say that it is a part of the LGBT, some people say it isn't, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's an alternative way of having relationships. But I did want to talk about how we identify, because it's an interesting topic for some people, and it's debatable for a lot of people. And I know we have fairly strong opinions about how we identify.
Yeah.
So, do you identify in a specific way? With a specific title?
So I would say by definition, by my understanding of definitions, I most closely identify probably with pansexual. However, for one, ease, and two, because of the fact that pan wasn't a widely used term when I first had my first same-sex partnership and stuff. That was really young. It was my first serious relationship as a teenager. I usually, if someone asks, I'll just say bisexual.
Yeah.
Or if it comes up, or if it's like, you know, you're memeing and it's a joke or whatever, I'm like, whatever, bisexual girl. But I guess technically I'm actually pansexual.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter why. It doesn't really matter. I've also had periods of time where I wondered if I was straight. I had periods of time where I thought that I was lesbian. It's just, I just think it's fluid and it changes, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. Mine is. I don't really know. Is that bad? I don't really know. It's like they're all a little bit.
Bit of this, bit of that.
One thing that I kind of feel uncomfortable with them sometimes is they're all kind of a little bit policed. Like some people kind of go, this is exactly what this one means, and I'm like, oh, well, that's not really what I thought. And it just kind of gets a bit pushy. So
Absolutely.
most of my life I've said not most of my life. My life after I realised I wasn't straight, I identified as bisexual. But for a lot of reasons that doesn't feel super comfortable. We can get into that another time. But I guess I would kind of say I'm pan as well. But I've just started saying I'm queer, or I just tell people I'm just straight up gay.
Yeah.
Or I just don't really say anything because I don't always feel like I need to explain it to people. So.
Yeah, that's it. I don't feel like I need to explain it to people. I also think with the massive shift in social politics that we're going through, it's more common to be queer of any kind. People ask less.
Yeah.
And to be honest, there's also, for me, there's a lot of videos of me having sex with a lot of different types of people on the internet.
Yeah.
So honestly, I just don't get asked that often.
Yeah.
Because probably a mixture of those things. Like I said, I mean, you can literally, I'm very public about, you know, making porn. So everyone has seen a bunch of the porn that I've made with a bunch of different types of people.
Yeah.
And so I probably also don't get asked as much because of that. But I can't remember the last time that someone asked how I identified in that way, to be honest.
I can't really remember either. Most people assume one of the other just from my appearance.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like, I'm not mad at any of them. Like, you can assume it. I think I haven't really been asked in a really long time, but sometimes I get one of my partners is a man, so sometimes I get I thought you were gay. And I'm like, and then it's like a whole conversation. If I feel like having the conversation, or I just laugh it off and go, whatever, because I don't really mind.
To be honest, I'm more surprised when I hear someone's straight these days.
Yeah.
Just because so many people around me are queer.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are being more comfortable at not sitting at either end of the, if one was as straight as can be and 10 is as gay as you can be, as homosexual as you can be, to be
gay as can be.
I don't really know that many people that don't fit between 2 and 9.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's not many people that I know that are fully a 1 or fully a 10.
I think that's also because of our social bubble as well.
Yeah, definitely.
But I do, I think it's natural to not be strictly something. I think it's like, not to say it's more natural than being straight or gay, but I just think it's a normal part of humanity that most things lie on some sort of spectrum.
Yeah.
And that changes throughout your life and depending on what's going on and depending on your surroundings. So it's pretty unsurprising to think that most people, given the most comfortable and freeing and supportive circumstances, would probably be somewhere between a 2 and a 9.
Yeah, I think with people being accepted and encouraged to, what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Eat pussy?
express. Yes. No. They to express their femininity or masculinity regardless of their physical body. I think that's opening a lot of more sexual attraction in other people because they could see maybe a feminine man or a masculine woman and they can appreciate the masculinity or the femininity in either way. So they kind of like, oh yeah, like maybe a cis woman might be like, no, I'm gay, right? Only attracted in other women, but might see a very feminine man and think, oh, actually, I'm now attracted to that man. I have sexual attraction towards that man. So then that woman is no longer a lesbian.
Yeah.
She is still lesbian-ish.
Yeah.
You know, which is great. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's what's happening kind of thing. How did you find out you were gay? Did you find out you were gay sort of thing? What did you do?
How did I find out that I
vagina.
was gay?
No.
I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I don't think that I ever really thought about it.
Yeah.
I just didn't know that I was straight to know that gay would be a change. Remember, like I said, my first partner was a woman. So, yeah, I didn't know, I didn't really know straight or gay was a thing that much then. I knew that some people liked men and some people liked women and some people liked both. I had family friends who were gay or somewhere on the, you know, other than straight on the spectrum. And I think I just hadn't really questioned it that much, to be honest. Don't know. And then I met my girlfriend and we started dating. And then, so I think that I kind of worked out how people viewed being gay as a thing and being gay as a thing that was less than normal or expected as a standard while I was dating that woman, not before I was dating the woman. So yeah, I don't know. It's not like I always knew, it's just I didn't know anything and then I started dating and just happened to be a woman.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you just didn't even know that there was like a different thing or there was one thing to be like not and there was one thing to be. I think that's really cool. Like we don't hear about that a lot, especially for people like our age.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this with you a lot. I'm really grateful for the fact that just never really a thing for me. And that just comes from my family being very open and understanding and just not being strict about what they taught me as being wrong or right, except for, you know, something that hurts other people is wrong.
Yeah.
Really?
I don't remember ever having anyone around me that was necessarily homophobic or anything like that. But for some reason...
You was a mad homophobe. To yourself.
To myself.
Not to anyone else.
Not to anyone else. Yeah. I never thought anyone else was wrong for doing anything and never felt any, you know, hatred or anything like that towards anyone else, but towards myself, oh my god, I would have people say to me like, oh, you're a lesbian or something, and I would just be so mad about it. So I'd like hate the fact that I was like this, but I would be so mad. I would be like, ew, I don't like girls. That's disgusting.
Disgusting.
I don't even know why though. I cannot find it in my limited memory of my upbringing. But, you know, and when I think about like my parents, neither of my parents are homophobic. I remember I said very obnoxiously to my dad, I've told you this story before, Tofu. I said the word faggot to my dad once when I was very young.
Disgusting.
Like very young.
Shame,
like I would think I was in primary school. And he got so mad at me. He was like, dad. You never say that word. That is a terrible word. And he was just like so mad at me. My dad doesn't get mad either. So, and me being obnoxious child just told him it's a bundle of sticks and like walked away from him. Anyway, don't do that. That's bad. And I was absolutely the gayest teenager ever. Mm-hmm. Like, even if you look back at my belongings, that my dad still has a few of them, it's like screams lesbian or bisexual. Like, it's just So
All they have is
ridiculous.
a rainbow flag and a strap on. They were clearly gay.
Yeah, totally. I just walked around with a strap everywhere. No, I
Just for
wasn't.
funsies. You're like, no, it's because I'm straight. This is how much I love dick.
And I remember even doing the whole stereotypical, like, really close friendship that you, like, you know, do little things with. And I, like, had a threesome with her and a man. And, like, you know, but I was like,
Yeah,
no, I'm
straight.
not
There's a
gay.
man here. Yeah, well, interestingly enough, even, like, you know, how you maybe a bit of a stereotype, you might have, like, a fiddle or a little kiss with a friend in, like, when you're little kids. Like a family friend or whatever. That person for me was also a woman.
Most of my sexual kind of experiences were with women or girls when I was younger.
Sexual
My
awakening.
sexual experiences. But yeah, if you asked me back then, definitely not gay. Terrible.
Would never be one of the gays.
The
Absolutely
worst. But yeah, like kind of figuring out what my sexual attraction is and what it means to me has been a very weird, long, interesting kind of experience.
not. Journey.
Oh, I hate that word.
It's been a journey.
It's been a journey.
Like,
Like,
good.
Frodo. That's how interesting
Trying to
my...
stick your finger in the ring.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Oh, yep. My finger's been in a few rings.
My finger's been in some rings.
I've worn many rings in my lifetime.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I don't know what I am. I guess I'm just queer, and figuring that out was weird, and coming to that kind of conclusion where I was like, it's actually okay that I am attracted to these types of people, even though I never really had any reason to think that it wasn't okay, but for some reason I had like a fear of expressing that side of myself.
Mm.
And then I did have a same-sex partner for a little while in my early 20s, and that was lovely, most of it.
Mine was not.
Towards the
lovely.
end, not so much, but we were like really, really good friends, and then ended up turning into like a relationship, and then like, you know, how they do. And now one of my partners is a woman, and I've had lots of sexual experiences with women, so I'm definitely into the same sex thing, and I'm also into the other sex thing.
Love that. Just love sex.
Well,
Speaking of,
do I though?
that is the other thing that we were going to speak about today. Yeah, we've just been talking a lot about having the sex and very graphically talking about sodomy.
And wearing many rings.
Wearing many rings. But
For anyone listening and not watching, I also have really long acrylic nails at the moment, so it's even funnier me doing.
yes.
Anyway.
Just tearing people to shreds.
Yeah,
with the
it's
giant
ripping them
nails.
open.
So, yeah, the other topic that we're going to talk about is I would still consider to be a sexual orientation, but in a different way. Not talking about your sexual orientation in the traditional way. I don't know if there's a better word for this. I haven't been able to find one.
Like less
That's-
about like what you're attracted to and more your drive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a sex drive sort of focused. If there is another word, let us know. But actually directly connected to that orientation. Whereas I feel like a sex drive sort of changes day to day and month to month and year to year. Which this can too, but it's sort of an overall, I guess, personal identifier versus just how much of a drive you have right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But I don't have a better word, so I would still call it a sexual orientation.
Mhm.
But talking about hypersexuality and asexuality,
Yeah.
the spectrum between those two things, and all the way up to those two things. So Aiden had some fancy facts about the other form of sexuality. I do not have facts. I thought it'd be interesting just to talk about our experience and what we've learned, and I guess the conclusions that we've come to, the ideas that we've come to in our heads, at this point, because of course this pod is mostly just focused on us talking about our experiences and learning together and hearing back from you guys. Not so much all about facts and what is technical reality, but also just what we think right now and our experiences. So I didn't look at anything online, I didn't look at any qualifiers, I didn't look at any names. I purely sat down and wrote down the traits that I would put to different parts of the spectrum just based on my first thoughts, because I thought that would be interesting. So just to make it easy so I could do that, I've broken it essentially into 3 parts of the spectrum. So the first part would be, I guess, the top third, which I would call hypersexuality. I think most people call hypersexuality. That top third of the spectrum. Things that I associate with that is enjoying casual sex. Sex not equaling affection necessarily, or not necessarily equaling a emotional or romantic connection. They're more likely to happily and comfortably share a sexual space more freely with other people. So obviously it still needs to be consensual. But they are more likely, if they enjoy someone's company and they think they're attractive and they're comfortable around that person, they probably would be more likely to comfortably share a sexual space with them in that circumstance.
For me, I think in like the hypersexuality, I think it's people that are very open, being sexual and talking about sexual things with all kinds of people, not just like people that they're really close with. Like for me, like if I'm thinking of someone that I would consider as a very sexual or hypersexual person, they're like open about, I'm having sex and this, they're very open about it.
So I would disagree with that only because of my experience, and I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum, but I'm super open talking about sexuality.
But is that just because you're a sex worker?
No, because it was before I was a sex worker. I think that's part of the reason that I found it so easy to be a sex worker.
Fair enough.
So, I don't know, but maybe I'm an outlier in that situation.
Because I'm, you and I sit pretty in kind of similar spots. And I'm not super comfortable talking about sexual stuff with anyone and everybody. Like, I will talk about sexual things, but not necessarily my sexual things. With anyone and everyone.
I also think that...
And I've gotten more comfortable since I'm, have done sex work and have been exposed to sex workers. Just because of, exposure therapy.
I think... maybe I am the outlier in that situation.
I could be completely wrong. Correct me if I am wrong, but that's just again, we're just using our own kind of...
That's just our own
definitions.
Interesting. I never really connected those two things just because I am not that.
True.
But it's interesting to think about. My next one is sex with friends. So they might be more likely to have sex with their friends, or have friends with benefits, or have an ongoing casual sexual relationship, or things along those lines, and still have sex with a friend and still just consider them a friend and not really question it so much as a lot of people do if you end up in a sexual situation with a friend, and or might want sex more often. So when we talk about hypersexuality, not for everyone, it's not necessarily going to be about who they would have sex with, but their sex drive itself. It's sort of like two aspects to it. Because the same thing with the opposite end of the spectrum, you could be asexual because you have no sex drive, or you could have a really high sex drive but just not want to, or not feel comfortable to have sex with other people. So there's sort of those two aspects. Hypersexuality, you might have a really high sex drive, or you could not have as high of a sex drive but just be more open to the amount or who you are having sex with.
The frequency of the banging.
The banging frequency, absolutely. Do you agree with that? Do you have anything to add?
I think Yeah, someone who's maybe more likely to have multiple purely sexual partners at one time, like regardless of whether they're single or in like a open relationship or a non-monogamous relationship or something. But someone to me who is hypersexual will, not all the time, but is more open to having multiple just sexual partners. Not necessarily multiple romantic, but you know, like they have lots of fuck buddies or that kind of thing, and they're fine with that, and they're open to that, and they almost want that. That's kind of what I would say.
Yeah, I agree. So the middle category, the middle third, I've just written quote unquote standard because I wouldn't know a word for it. That is what most things I think say online, because we want to avoid using the word normal, because obviously it's not necessarily normal, but standard, because I just don't know another word for that middle part of the spectrum.
Sextrum.
So what I've written is case by case basis, so it's less driven by, oh no, I don't want to have sex with people, or I do want to have sex with people, but just driven by your experience of that particular person. Sex generally equals some level of affection or connection. Again, that can, of course, vary depending on the person and your experience of them. But I would say, from my experience with people in this part of the spectrum, it would generally equal some sort of affectionate scenario. I would say that they balance their sex drive with their comfort and attraction levels. So it's not like they have a super high sex drive necessarily, or a super low sex drive, or they're super comfortable having sex, or they're not comfortable having sex. They'll just case by case and go, I have a high sex drive right now, and I'm really comfortable with you, so maybe I will have casual sex with you. Or I'm really into you, I have an average sex drive right now, and so I'll sort of take it slow with you, but be open to being sexual with you, or, you know, something like that. So I would say, I mean, I don't think I have that many definitions of what standard really is. So those are really all the things that I guess came to my mind, because I just think it's probably very case by case based. Not that not everyone's case by case. Everyone,
I guess,
I'm
like,
sure, is
someone
case
who
by
has
case.
just like a moderate amount of sex drive, who is probably open to some sex, but probably would steer a little bit away from things that are super casual. Like, you know, less one night stands, but they could probably have sex with friends that they like. You know, that's kind of like...
and I think it also, just depending on the time of your life and what's going on and that sort of stuff, like, So the next section, the next third I have is, I've just titled as asexual, because I would say that's the most commonly used term for this end of the spectrum. Under that I have grey sexual. So to me, by my understanding of grey sexual, there's a lot of things that sort of fall under grey sexual, but it would be someone who leans more towards asexual, but has more of a sex drive or attraction level situationally, depending on the person. And they have more exceptions to that rule. Asexual, so when I think of asexual, when I'm thinking of asexual in this context, I'm genuinely thinking of someone who either has almost or no sex drive, or has almost or no willingness to share sexual space with other people. So what the difference for me in my mind between grey sexual and asexual is there's almost no exceptions when it comes to plain asexuality. Grey sexuality is there's very few exceptions, or maybe just not as many as you would expect. Romance does not equal sex. So kind of the opposite that we talked about, the same but different of hypersexuality is like sex doesn't necessarily equal romance. I would say a lot of people on the other end of the spectrum would say romance doesn't equal sex. I can be romantic with someone without... Because someone can be aromantic as well.
I would not change it, but I would add in intimate. You can be intimate without actually having
I agree.
sex. I
I think that's a better that's a better thing, because, you know, someone hypersexual can have sex without feeling intimate,
Yeah.
and someone asexual can feel intimate without wanting to have sex or thinking they owe someone sex or thinking that they need to include sexuality in that experience.
Or even just thinking sexual thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. From my understanding of asexuality is they don't even have the sexual thoughts that come with it as well, that, you know, many other more hypersexual like saxophone, more hypersexual or anyone else in the middle of that, you know, they would have the sexual thoughts pop up as well, where my understanding of asexual people is they don't really have the sexual thoughts there either.
Yeah, interesting point, definitely. The last little note I have is they might be uncomfortable with all or most physical affection, or they might only be comfortable doing it with certain people. So this obviously might mean sex, but it also might mean hugging or cuddling or kissing or making out. You know, they might be comfortable pecking someone, but not comfortable, you know, kissing someone with tongue, or happy to hug someone, hello, but not happy to lie in bed and cuddle and watch a movie. You know, that it really like can vary to all. It could be someone who doesn't necessarily have a sex drive but is totally comfortable with all types of physical affection. You know, asexual people can still have sex and they can still be intimate and they can still do all these things. Or it might mean someone that is not comfortable really having physical contact with anyone.
Yeah.
A partner, a friend, whoever. And they're just not comfortable embracing people in that way, not comfortable being physical. As you sort of talked about before, it might be not even comfortable discussing it.
Yeah, I think from what I understand of people that sit closer to the asexual end, the comfortability of being around anything sexual, seeing anything sexual, discussing anything sexual can become uncomfortable for people. Like, they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to talk about their own experiences, they don't want to see it, they don't want to be involved in it, kind of thing.
Just don't, you can dilly-dally all you like, but just don't involve me in it in any way.
Yeah, like, you go crazy. Go to Pound Town, but don't involve me.
I don't want to know about it. I don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I think that it varies a lot. I think that we might in future talk a bit more about my experience being comfortable with sex work and talking about sexuality and stuff. But I think for me, which we're about to talk about, which is where we both fall, for me, the fact that I am on that end of the spectrum makes it easier to talk about, because I have less emotional ties to that whole concept, and I think that it makes doing my work easier, and I think it makes talking about it easier. And I think, you know, we joke all the time, I've joked so many times, like, you have sex right next to me and I literally wouldn't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me. And that's not because I'm like, woo, free love. But I mean, I am like free love for everyone. Fuck yeah, free love. But that's not why I'm comfortable. It's just because I just think, why? Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? It just doesn't. I just don't have a visceral reaction to sexuality in that way. And I think that's why I'm so comfortable talking about it. So that's why I find it really interesting that you brought up not being comfortable talking about it, because I think that's such a valid point, but it's just been so different to my experience.
Yeah.
So I think interesting subject.
Yeah, with the talking about it, like, as I said, I'm not actually uncomfortable talking about sex. I'll talk about sex to anybody. But it's like, depending on who it is, my very specific details about sex I have had is not that forthcoming to come out of my mouth. Like, I will talk about sexual acts and I'll talk about them and joke about them and, you know, go into detail about different things, and I might say I've done something, but the detail around it will be like private, if that makes sense. Quote unquote private. And when I kind of started understanding what this whole being closer to asexual even was, and kind of started to look it up and figure it all out and that kind of thing, I was like, it's not that I'm being private, because I actually don't really care. Like, I've done sex work. Like, I've been on the internet with everything spread open for people to look at. Like, I actually don't care. It's not that. It's just I have this like thing preventing the words from coming out of my mouth. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I'm the opposite. I love telling people the story of how I shit myself.
Yeah.
See, leading into, I'll lead into my sexuality because I think this is an interesting point to make about bisexuality. Is I would consider myself demisexual, and we can elaborate a bit more on that in a second. But I think it's interesting because I am completely comfortable talking about anything like that, unless someone that I don't have an interest in is getting something out of it. So if some random dude walks up to me at a club or whatever and is chatting to me, and you can tell I can tell they're trying to sort of hit on me, or it's sort of trying to go somewhere, and they ask about the time I shit myself, and they're like, oh yeah. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
If I meet the same guy out at a club and we're just having a jolly old time and we're having a chat and they don't seem to be, have any intention, fuck yeah, I'll tell them about the time I shit myself.
Yeah,
no worries at all, no worries.
As soon as I kind of have the idea that someone is sexually attracted to me, and it's not sex work, because obviously that's implied and I go into doing that thinking that that's going to happen, so that's different. But just a friend or a random person and they are exhibiting some sort of sexual attraction to me, I'm disgusted.
Yeah.
I identify more in the grey sexual than demi. I used to think I was more demisexual, but after doing my own kind of little, and I remember running down my stairs one night going, Tofu, listen to this, I think I'm this. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. I do that often. My bedroom is above Tofu's bedroom, and I very often run down the stairs.
Yeah, bang, 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 bang down the stairs, and I'm like, oh, something's happening.
Knock on the door really gently and go, hey, Tofu. But yeah, I remember doing that one night, and the grey sexual thing, for me, from my understanding, is kind of like what you said earlier. Grey sexual is like very close to asexual, except for some circumstances. So I do feel sexual attraction towards certain people, and only if they show sexual attraction towards me, but it has to be paired with a really deep emotional connection. So it's kind of tied in with the romance and the intimacy. It's not just a sexual attraction. And only if they're showing it towards me. If they're showing it towards me, it's immediately returned. Mm-hmm. But it's very rare that it's going to come up in me first if I don't know it's already there in that other person. And it's only very specific people. I think when I kind of discovered grey sexual, it made a lot of sense to me about that like very specific sexual attraction, because I have very deep, intimate, romantic connections with some people that I have very little to no desire to have sex with. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I think they are unattractive or anything like that. I think they are extremely attractive people. And if it was all the planets aligned or something one day and it happened to happen, I'm not going to be upset about it or mad about it or anything. But I have found myself being like, oh, I'm actually not feeling that. And if anyone ever says, hey, I'm not feeling sexually attracted to you, say thank you for letting me know that and move on with your life.
Yeah. Move on with your fucking life.
That's the end of that statement. But,
okay, that is all you need.
Yeah, so when I kind of realised that, I did feel bad at the beginning. I felt like I was doing something wrong. I felt like I was broken or like I was doing the wrong thing, because for like a really long time, and I think one of the reasons why I thought I was just, a normal sexual person, and then I thought I was demisexual, is because I still kind of felt like the only way to be really intimate with someone was to be having sex with them. Mm-hmm. But that's just not true. Intimacy absolutely can mean sex, but you're missing out on 99.99% of intimacy if you think it's only sex. Like, there's so much more to intimacy. Like, I would argue that you and I are extremely intimate.
Very intimate.
But we are not in a sexual relationship at all.
No.
And we're not even in a relationship. We're best friends.
Yeah.
So
we're not even in a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, we are in a romantic relationship, but we're not in a
romantic.
romantic relationship.
Yeah. Not like well, actually, we could be de facto.
That's true.
You ever go to the hospital? I've got you.
That's right. You haven't used your first home buyers, so we're fine.
Yeah, we're good. We could buy a house. Cute.
Beautiful. So the moral of the story is, be whatever the fuck you want.
Just be whatever the fuck you want.
Do whatever you want
And
to
just
do.
like...
And also, no is a full sentence.
That's
my moral as well.
No is a full sentence. And I think, like, understanding that everyone sits somewhere between 1 and 100.
Yeah.
And nobody is wrong for feeling however they want to feel about sex.
Yeah.
And sexual stuff.
Yeah, and that kind of will most likely change over time.
Yeah.
Almost definitely.
Absolutely.
If you allow it to, and if you want it to.
Yeah.
Sometimes even if you don't want it to.
Good fun. And
anyway.
So many factors that can change your
Absolutely.
sex drive as well, so.
Finding supportive people around you will probably help quite a lot though.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it helps when you have someone that you can just run down the stairs to and go, hey, I found out
Even if you don't
thing.
live with them, just run down the hypothetical stairs and
knock on their door and tell them a weird fact that you just learned about yourself.
Thank you for joining us today to Scream into the Void. Remember, the void is always here for you. We have got you. If you did enjoy this episode, we'd love to hear from you. We regularly put out questions on our social medias. My Instagram is at nerdfucks, NERDFUX. Aiden's is Aiden Ray at AYDANREI. And the Void is at In the Void Podcast. See you next time, guys.